It was the beginning of my sophomore year at SMU in Dallas, Texas. Yeah. I was 19 years old. I was an acting major, and in the department, they had something on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons called conference hour. And this is where all the drama students would be shuffled into the Margot Jones Theater, and we would hear a variety of speakers, each one of them trying to help create the fiction that becoming a professional actor was a viable career choice. I remember the first conference hour of my sophomore year, the first speaker was Professor Jack Clay, who was head of the professional acting curriculum. Professor Clay, a very formal, very formidable man, and he was speaking about the state of education of the American actor and how woefully inadequate it was. And then he used this as a segue to introduce the main event of the evening, a new professor, Professor Joan Potter, new acting teacher. Joan Potter was special in many, many ways. One of which, she was no academic. She studied with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio in New York. She was in their world-famous production of The Three Sisters. She was in a movie with Richard Burton. She played a nurse. This was the first time any of us were going to be able to learn our craft from a real professional. I remember at the end of that conference hour, my faculty advisor, Dr. Bernard Hopgood, you know him? That's why he was known affectionately as Hob, and I have to describe Hob to you. If you subscribe to the theory that we all freeze our appearance at the time we thought we were the hottest, then you have to think that Hob must have thought he was one hot beatnik. Even though he was 60s with a 60 paunch, he still had the little goatee beard, had the beret at a jaunty angle on his head, smoked the European non-filtered cigarettes. You knew he had a set of bongo drums at his home. Hob came running up to me. Now, he had very few students that he advised, too. And there was a reason for this. Hob was not an acting professor at all. Jack Clay, who was head of the professional acting curriculum, counseled many, many students. But Hob was the titular head of the entire theater department. He was more of a bureaucrat and a politician, and consequently you could never really understand anything he said. So Hob came running up to me and said, Tobo, you know, all the new kids are going to be doing their freshman auditions at the end of the week. It may be a good idea if you went out there and did something to shake things up a bit. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I recognize now Hob was giving me good advice. He wanted me, even though I was a sophomore, he wanted me to do freshman auditions again to properly introduce myself as an actor to Joan Potter, the faculty, the new directing students. But I was a moron. I thought that when Hob told me he wanted me to come in and do something to shake things up a bit, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that he was urging me to do a novelty piece. So I got a hilarious idea. I thought that what I would do was, even though I was a sophomore, I would do the same piece I did when I was a freshman, which was a monologue of Orlando from As You Like It, but this time I would do it as a striptease. This could have been an error in judgment. So that night of the freshman auditions, they called my name. I came out, and I began to take off. These trees shall be my books, and in their barks my thoughts all character, that every eye within this forest looks shall see thy virtue witnessed everywhere. Oh, run, run, Orlando, call on every tree, the bear, the chase, the inexpressive she, and I was down to my boxer shorts, and I had written Hi Hob on my butt, and I finished saluting and dancing off stage. pinching of pennies. Hob was laughing so hard, I thought they were going to have to carry him out on a stretcher. Now, this is not to say that everyone appreciated my performance. I'm thinking maybe the one person who didn't could have been Joan Potter. Now, I'm just guessing this because my first assignment in her class, which was to do a scene, write a report on it, she gave me an F. An F. I never got an F in my life, and as she handed it to me, she said, "I need to talk to you after class." So everyone left, and I was standing face to face with Joan Potter on the Margot Jones stage, and she was shaking with rage. She had tears in her eyes, and she said, "Are you making fun of the process?" I said, "No, ma'am, no, I don't know enough about the process to make fun of it." She said, "Because I won't have it. I won't have it." I said, "No, ma'am, you shouldn't have it. I'm sorry for the report. I'll redo the report. I'll make it big. I'll put in footnotes. Oversight, everything. I'm so sorry." The next morning, after first period theater history, Hob was waiting for me. Now, the men's room was adjacent to the theater history room. Hob pulled me into the men's room and said, "What did you do to Joan?" I said, I don't. "Well, she's furious with you." I know, I read her report." "Well, you don't want to get on her bad side." I said, "I think it's too late for that. What do you recommend?" And he said, "Do something different. Whatever you're doing now is not working at all. I would do the opposite." I said, "Thank you for your advice." So I left the bathroom and I took as my motto the Taoist creed that the axe falls on the tallest tree. And I resigned that I would be the smallest tree in Joan Potter's forest. In her class, I did not laugh. I did not smile. I did not tell jokes. I did not ask questions. I just quietly did my work and didn't make waves. And near the end of the term, I felt like we had reached a sort of détente. I knew that she didn't like me, but I felt that she no longer absolutely hated me. And then something happened that changed everything. It was announced for the first time in SMU theater history that each acting teacher could pick 2 scenes to go in a show of scenes and be presented for the public. It would be counted as a major production on your resume. They would invite critics. It was a big deal. And I was flabbergasted when Joan Potter came up to me and said, "Stephen, the work you're doing on your scene is so remarkable. I would love it to be one of my 2 scenes." Inside, I was going, "Yes, I have done it!" But outside, I was tallest tree, tallest tree, tallest tree. And I said, "Thank you, Miss Potter. It would be an honor if I could be one of your 2 scenes." And she began to walk away, and she said, there's just one thing. There are a few rough parts at the beginning of your scene. Maybe if we rehearsed for a couple of hours Wednesday, we could work that out. Well, that was a problem for me. I was scheduled to do crew call on Wednesday, and I told her, and she said, "Stephen, crew call? We're talking about a major production here." I'll tell you what. I will talk to Mr. Van Dimmel, who's head of the stage crew. Better still, I will write a note to Mr. Van Dimmel, and I will see if I can get you excused. We'll talk about it tomorrow. The next day, I arrived at school. Joan Potter was waiting for me and said, "Stephen, wonderful news. I wrote a note to Mr. Van Dimmel. He said he has more than enough people to tear down the King Lear set. You are free to rehearse. Congratulations. Good show." So Wednesday afternoon, instead of tearing down King Lear, I went and rehearsed with Joan Potter. The next morning, after theater history, Hob was waiting for me. He pulled me into the men's room and said, "Where were you?" I said, "What are you talking about?" "You missed crew call." I said, No, Hob, this is all good. Joan Potter picked my scene to be one of her 2 scenes, and she got me excused. She wrote a note to Mr. Van Dimmel. He said it was fine." Hob stared at me and said, "There was no note. And even if there was a note, she couldn't have gotten you excused because it says specifically in the handbook of the theater department that no teacher can get a student excused from crew call. At our school, crew call is a top priority. More than a major production. You miss crew call, it's an automatic unsatisfactory critique. It goes on your permanent record, 2 unsatisfactory critiques, and you are out of the school. I could not grasp with what had just happened to me. The evening of the show of scenes, Joan Potter did not look at me. She did not speak to me. She put my scene on last, and I sat down, I remember, backstage and stared at a corner of the room and thought, be good, be good, be good, just this one time be good. And maybe all the fires around you will go out. And we were good. We finished the show with a standing ovation, and I thought the world would look different on Monday. I arrived at school. All of my fellow students were standing around the call board in the green room, wanted to see what the fuss was about. They had posted a list of all the students who had been accepted into the professional acting curriculum. And what that means, translated, is that it was a list of sophomores who were accepted back into the program for the next year. This was no matter of suspense. They always accepted everyone, except for this year. My name was not on the list. The blood drained from my head. I ran up to Hobgood's office. His secretary saw me running in and went to bar the door. I ran past her into the inner sanctum. Hob could see from the way I ran into the office. I had seen the list on the board, and I could see from the way he was running around behind his desk. He knew all about it. And he said, "It's wrong. It's wrong. I know it's wrong. I wrote on your file, Hob does not agree." You wrote on my file? I've just been thrown out of the department. He said, well, there was nothing we could do. It requires 6 votes, a unanimous vote from all the faculty for a student to get into the professional acting curriculum. Your vote was 5-1. Joan Potter voted you down. But with the unsatisfactory critique on your record, she had ammunition. Our hands were tied. Now listen, rather than flying off the handle now we have to think of options, viable options for you. It won't do any good to transfer to another university. With an unsatisfactory on your record, no good school would take you. My advice to you, drop out of the theater department, get a new major. You could still try out for plays. You could take any of the academic courses, theater, history. The only thing off limits to you would be anything in the acting program, the professional acting curriculum. I left Hob's office. In the 20-minute walk from the school to my little room off campus, I saw the end of everything I ever dreamed of doing or being. The end of being an actor, not graduating from college, perhaps. I knew my parents would give me emotional support, but they weren't advocates. They never wanted me to be an actor. And as I walked home, I was hit by a sudden Texas storm, and it was freezing cold, but I didn't feel a thing. I was kept warm by a combination of fury and failure. It is a bad mix, but it will protect you from the elements for short periods of time. I got back to my little room. I closed the door. I didn't even have the strength to turn on the light, and I sat there. I don't know how long I sat. And in the growing darkness, I had the first real conference hour of my life. A conference hour with myself. All my strengths and weaknesses laid bare. No lies. No excuses. And in the silence, I heard a phrase. Something I learned in Sunday school when I was in 8th grade from the great Jewish teacher Hillel. He said, if I am not for myself, who is? If I am for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when? I always loved that phrase. It was so catchy, even though I never really understood that last part. If not now, when? When you think about it, it really can mess with you. Joan Potter didn't realize it, but she had given me the gift of when. In this case, when was now. I came up with a plan that was so ridiculous it had no chance in working. The next day I went to the registrar's office and signed up for my junior year, and in doing so I signed up for every class in the professional acting curriculum I wanted, even though I'd been thrown out of the department. First day junior year, when Joan Potter walked into her intermediate scene study class and saw me sitting there, she almost had a stroke. First thing she did was divvy up scenes and scene assignments, scene partners. She passed me by. She asked if there were any questions. I raised my hand. She looked straight through me. For the rest of the day, in all of the classes I went to, the professors were looking at their roles, confused, some amused. What the hell is this guy still doing here? The next morning, after first period theater history year 2, Hob was waiting for me. He said, "My office, now." I had never seen Hob so mad before. His little head was about to explode. He brought me into his room, closed the door, sat down, and tried to find his words. He said, "Stephen, the classes of the professional acting curriculum are not an option for you. I'm sorry. This is not the way I would have wanted it, but that's the way it is. You have to understand. If we allow you to stay in these classes, even though you haven't been accepted into the program, we will have no control in the future as to who takes these courses. I'm sorry." And I said, "Hob, your problems are of no concern to me. Who you accept or don't accept into the program is your business, but I see this whole thing differently. You accepted my check of tuition, which means you're working for me. I am partially paying your salary and Joan Potter's salary and Jack Clay's salary, so I will be in class. I'm sorry, Hob. I always wanted to be an actor, and there's no way you people are going to stop me." For the next 10 weeks, I went to classes. Joan Potter never gave me an assignment. She never graded my tests. She turned my essays back unread, unmarked. I wasn't cast in any place my junior year. I still showed up. One day after theater history, Hob was waiting for me. Pulled me into the men's room, went back to the urinal, unzipped and began peeing. I was unsure of the etiquette. So I went to the urinal next to him and began peeing too. And he said, "I think she's going to do something else." And I said, What do you mean?" He said, Joan Potter." I said, "What are you saying, Hob?" He said, "In faculty meeting this morning, she said, 'How can you get a student permanently expelled from the school?' I told her 2 unsatisfactories. She got this look in her face and left. Stephen, I think she's going to try to get a second unsatisfactory on you." I said, "Hob, what else is there I can do that's unsatisfactory?" Gotta be careful, he's wearing a suit. I'm not cast in any play, so I can't miss a rehearsal. I'm not going to miss any more crew calls. It's not my fault. I turn in all my assignments. I can't help it if they're not graded. He says, I know. I just wanted to warn you. Watch your back." Thank you, Hob. We both zipped up and went our separate ways. I walked out of that bathroom and looked at my universe of no options. And that is when I learned the first lesson of this whole horrible time. Never underestimate the power of being underestimated. I went to my theater history teacher, Tony Graham White. I felt he was the one teacher who liked me because I was the one student who liked theater history. Tony Graham White, short, idiosyncratic, brilliant Englishman, kind of crazy hair and glasses. "Oh, Mr. Tobolowsky, what can I do for you?" I said, "Well, Tony, actually, you can do a lot for me. You are the teacher who gives the comprehensive examination, right? He goes, right. Actually, I give it in 3 weeks. And footnote for comprehension. The comprehensive examination was the test every student in the theater department had to take to graduate. You took it at the end of your senior year. It took weeks to study for, covered every facet of theater. Everybody hated it. I said, Tony, is there anything in the bylaws of the theater department that say a student can't take that test early? He goes, take it early? Who wants to take it early? Everybody hates the bloody thing. I said, Tony, you may be aware of a problem I'm having with a member of the faculty. Tony just rocked on his heels. I said, listen, Tony, when you get that test in a couple of weeks, I want to take it. But no one can know I'm taking it. My name cannot appear on any list. You cannot tell anyone in the faculty. You cannot tell your friends. You can't even tell your family. Tony looked at me. This was as close as he had ever been to being in a James Bond movie. I said, one other thing, Tony. After I take the test, I only want you to grade it, and if you could keep it for me, somehow, in case I need it. Tony rocked on his heels. I can do that. So I studied for the test for 3 weeks. In the back of Tony Gramwhite's classroom on a Saturday morning, I took the comprehensive exam a year and a half early. A week later, I'm walking through the green room, and Tony comes snaking through everyone in the green room. Just graded your test, flying colors! I felt I had achieved a minor victory in this undeclared war, and then I walked into Joan Potter's class, and she handed me back an essay, unread, unmarked, and most surprisingly, I was crushed. I was beaten. I had never felt such despair. I realized I could not go on doing this anymore. To such an extent that the next big assignment I had was in Jack Clay's period styles class to do a comedic song. Blew it off. I did not have the energy to prepare another assignment for no purpose. Jack Clay walked into period styles that morning like conquering Caesar, and he said, who would like to show me what they've done with comic songs? And everyone who loves show tunes raised their hand. Jack Clay looked past them. Mr. Tobolowsky, why don't you come forward and show us what you've been working on? Well, the last time I did the song had been 2 weeks before in the shower. I got up, I stumbled through a verse and part of a chorus, and Mr. Clay stopped me. He said, stop. This is shoddy and unprofessional. Did you even work on this? No, sir. I did not. Professor Clay fixed me with his eye. Well, at least you're honest. Mr. Tobolowsky, for the next class, you will take this song and move it to performance level, and you will do a second song and move it to performance level 2. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. And Mr. Tobolowsky, you will never come to my class unprepared again. No, sir. The next time I was meeting Jack Clay was for Shakespeare class, and boy, I was prepared. I had worked on my Act 1 Leontes monologue. Good thing I was the first one he called up. I did my speech. The first thing Professor Clay did was damn me with faint praise. Not bad for a first time through. But you're still only scratching the surface. Remember, this is the story of a man who's lost everything. Mr. Tobolowsky, for the next class, I want you to bring the speech to the next level. And I want you to take Leontes' Act 5 monologue, prepare it too, and I want you to work on the scene of Hamlet meeting the ghost of his father. You will be the ghost, and you are to have your lines completely memorized by next class. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Sit down. Everyone in the class was silent. They thought I had just been scolded in public. They weren't aware that they were witness to an act of great kindness. Yes. For the next year and a half, Jack Clay doubled and tripled my assignments. He gave me extra reading. He graded all of my tests and papers hard but fair. When I did Groundhog Day, Harold Ramis told me the first day I was there, that it was impossible for anyone to become a professional actor. The only ones who could do it were people who had had 4 angels, 4 heroes who would help them. You don't know where they're going to come from, but they were always there. Jack Clay is one of my 4 heroes. An interesting thing from this period of time was, in spite of the fact that Joan Potter did not grade my test or papers, at the end of each term in all of her classes, she always gave me A's. Yeah, I know, it's weird. We're all used to Disney movies where the abusive teacher punishes a student with giving them bad grades. That's the part I played in Freaky Friday. But it kept me going, made me happy. I thought maybe she had good days and bad days. Maybe she was bipolar. But then I got a cynical thought. I was always a good student. Uncharacteristically low grades in Joan Potter's class could set up red flags to faculty, to administrators, to my family, that perhaps something untoward was going on in the drama department. If Joan Potter had dark designs on me, the perfect cover for her would be A's in her class. The last attack from Joan Potter came near the end of my senior year. I arrived at school, Hob was waiting for me, wanted to see me in his office, closed the door. He said, I have bad news. He said, Joan Potter has given you a second unsatisfactory critique. I said, for what? He said, she said you were difficult in her class. I said, Hob, this is crazy. He says, I know, but it's crazy with consequences. Unfortunately, it means you won't be able to graduate. I said, won't be able to graduate? Why not? He said, well, you have the hours, you have the grades, but now with 2 unsatisfactories, you've been officially expelled from school. You won't be allowed to take the comprehensive examination. I took the comprehensive. He said, no, it's impossible. We give it next week. I said, no. I took it last year. Call Tony Graham White on the phone. Hob called him. It was the longest 2 minutes of my life. I crossed everything I had. I heard Tony's little feet walking down the hall. He walked in with the sealed manila envelope, put it on Hob's desk, turned and looked at me, saluted. For me for a year and a half. I made an A on it. I ended up graduating first in my class. Due in large part to all of the A's Joan Potter gave me. A few years ago, I get a call from SMU. They want me to speak at conferences. I fly back to Texas. I walk in and look at the theater and look at all of the 18 and 19-year-old faces. And I cannot believe I was ever that young. And before I begin my talk, a girl raises her hand and I point to her and she said, Mr. Tobolowsky, what do I need to know to be a professional actor? And I said, the only thing you need to know, I was lucky enough to learn right here at SMU. In your life, people will tell you no. You can't do it. You have to go home. You have to find a way to stand up to that, to survive that and say, no, this is what I'm doing. This is my life. Right or wrong, people are tried in this life. The problem is we tend to think of the trial as a sign of failure. It's not. It's just the doorway that takes you to who you really are.